The real cause for concern: King Charles was facing major threats from Andrew and his spoiler son Harry. With new royal biographies in the works and the matter of how the Duke of York's home still undecided, things could get even rockier for the king. If there are any economics researchers out there who need more evidence for the famous Pareto principle, then maybe they can just spend some more time reading royal news. What is the Pareto principle, you ask? Oh, well, just give me a chance to explain. So, in the late 19th century, there was a man named Vincent Pareto, and he came up with his famous 80-20 thesis. So he said that 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. And right now, we got a couple of royal dukes who are living, breathing proof of exactly what he was talking about. At this point, I think it's pretty safe to assume that about 80% of Buckingham Palace's stress is coming directly from the actions of only two people, Prince Andrew and Prince Harry. For years now, both dukes have been thorns in the side of the palace PR machine, but lately things have been strangely quiet. But if King Charles had thought that his brother and his son's controversy-sparking, crisis-inducing antics were over, both men ready to settle in for a couple of years of aimlessly filling the hours of the day, then I've got some very bad news for him indeed. Because there are more than a few signs that suggest both Andrew and Harry are about to be at it again. And I know that if you're listening to this, you already know all about how we got here. So let's start with Andrew. Of course, there was the fact that Andrew was best buddies with Jeffrey Epstein, a man who would later become an officially convicted sex offender, and who was also facing a child sex trafficking trial when he supposedly took his own life back in 2019. Andrew got all caught up in the fallout, and so then he went on to make a bad situation even worse when he went on TV to make the case that actually his biggest mistake was just being too honorable towards Epstein, and at the same time ignoring the at least 125 women who are suspected to have been abused by his buddy. Within days, the Duke was effectively exiled. Later on, in 2021, Andrew ended up being sued by Virginia Giuffre. She claimed that he had sexually abused her on 3 separate occasions, claims that he continues to deny. In early 2022, Andrew decided to settle with Giuffre, with some estimates putting the figure as high as nearly $23 million. Other figures estimate that it might be as low as $5 million, but still, it was something pretty big. And how could we forget Harry's story? Well, he left the royal family with Meghan Markle, and then he proceeded to spend years whining about his family. He made millions complaining about his family, actually, and overall just complaining about the fact that he was born into one of the most privileged and wealthy families on the planet. Now, at that point, after they made so much money, it would have been safe to assume that Harry and Meghan were done, that they were finally going to live in peace, live the private lives they claimed they wanted. But then, in recent weeks, a few new details would suggest that both of these ducal disaster zones are certainly not resolved, and both ducal sources of palace strain may be about to come back to the front pages. Andrew certainly holds the title of being the most disliked member of the royal family, which actually is pretty impressive in some ways. Right now, about 7% of Brits hold a positive view of him, which is probably the same percentage of people who do not even have Wi-Fi. Earlier this year, there were reports that the king had decided that he wanted Andrew out of his big Windsor home, Royal Lodge, one of the grandest properties going for the HRH set. Now, considering how many people absolutely loathe the Duke of York, it made a lot of sense. I mean, allowing him to stay there, yeah, that sent all the wrong signals. In addition, reportedly the king was planning to cut Andrew's $476,000 allowance, meaning that even though the Duke had a lease on the lodge, he probably wouldn't be able to afford the upkeep. So basically an eviction. But Andrew was not going to go easily. Instead, both sides really dug their heels in, and we were all ready for a showdown. Then earlier this month, we learned the news that his Royal Lodge roommate Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer and had undergone a mastectomy. Now, right now, she is recovering, and it has been reported that the move has been temporarily put off while she gets better. But this is only temporary. This is not going to last forever. Famous biographer Andrew Lowney told the Daily Beast, Andrew is digging his heels. It's part of a wider power and status game with Charles. Optics don't look good, but that won't worry Andrew. I don't see him ever leaving. Charles and William have united to bring him down a peg or two and try and keep him and his family under the radar because they, as the future of the monarchy, have most to lose by his antics. But kicking Andrew out of this 30-room home is not some idea that His Majesty may forget, so let's remember this is still a live issue. Keeping this in mind, what could or would Andrew, backed into a corner and so desperate to hang on to Royal Lodge, resort to? So basically, it looks like this is a big disaster in waiting for the king and his crisis team. In other news that may leave those palace swords feeling incredibly nervous is the fact that Lowney, an acclaimed biographer, has revealed that right now he is working on a book about Andrew and Fergie. Do you want to know how worried the men in grey should be right now? Well, it was Lowney who first broke the allegations back in 2019 that Lord Mountbatten, Prince Philip's uncle, and King Charles's grandfather had sexually abused teenagers from a boys' home. And then last year, in Traitor King, he revealed that King Edward VIII had helped the Nazis invade France. So it looks like Lowney can get the scoop like nobody else. Now there could be fresh Andrew and Fergie bombshells to come. And for the second bit, we gotta talk about Harry. Apparently there's also some Sussex book in the works that should be a real cause for concern. Scooby-Doo, author of 2020's Finding Freedom, is supposed to release Endgame later on this year. I do hope that Queen Camilla has the cocktail shaker out already because I think the king is going to need a stiff drink or two to deal with all this. On a lighter and more hilarious note though, Endgame is being billed as a book that is going to, quote, pull back the curtain on an institution in turmoil, exposing the infighting, family deterioration, and outdated practices threatening its very future. This is the monarchy's endgame. Do they have what it takes to save it? I mean, yeah, it sounds ridiculous. But anyway, Scobie is certainly a Sussex supporter, and he has become their mouthpiece. In 2021, Meghan apologized for misleading a British court after failing to remember that she had approved of senior royal aide Jason Knopf briefing Scooby-Doo and his co-author Carolyn Durand for freedom. And now we're looking at the possibility that a few insider supporters of the Sussex cause have been leaking information, and maybe Charles and the rest of the family are in for some new fresh hell. The bottom line is the same for both dukes. They are unfinished business for the king. Buckingham Palace may be ready to move on from all the drama over the last few years, but the chances that they're going to be able to do that are highly unlikely. Both Andrew and Harry face pretty uncertain futures, so what may they say or do if push comes to shove? And with these new books coming out, what new allegations and claims may two well-connected biographers dig up? Unfortunately, it looks like the 20%ers are not finished yet. And you, what do you think about this news? Let us know below in the comments section. Don't be afraid to like and share this video with your friends and relatives who need it too. And don't be afraid to click the subscribe button to get more updates in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in, have a lovely weekend, and we'll be back to see you all tomorrow.